I always thought like I was not getting enough client, enough revenue, enough traction because my product wasn't good enough. And I think it was probably fundamentally a problem with the market. At Sleek, I promised myself I would never do the same mistake again. And therefore, we got revenue even before we got any product. We were just using...
Hi everyone, welcome back to Edric, Poon & Company, the podcast where anybody can inspire everybody. Thanks so much for tuning in. This week, we are going to be tackling this little thing, or it could be a big thing, called admin. And who better to deal with all this admin than, I'm sure you've heard of these guys called Sleek. We have the founder of Sleek with us today, and that would be Julien. Hey Julien.
Hi, Edric.
Thanks so much for coming for the podcast, man. I really appreciate it.
It's our pleasure.
Hey, you know, when I was setting up over here, some of your staff or some of your team members were actually coming in and going, "What is going on? Why is there filming with it? They're doing something. I don't know what it is." You know, is this something that you guys don't do?
Yeah, I think it's probably the culture of Sleek. We are probably a bit more focused on being a bit more industrious, our internal work and making noise and being out there in the press. So I think that's really true in our culture. We don't do a lot of press releases. We don't talk too much from a PR perspective. We are more focused on execution and trying to solve problems for ourselves, for our clients, and that keeps us quite busy.
Well, sometimes you gotta just do these things, right? Yeah. But I really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule to sit down with me and literally explain to me what problems we're solving now as a small business owner myself. Admin is the biggest challenge in my day because I'm busy running around trying to do all these things. And I remember the first day that I set it up. Now, this is to all of you, budding entrepreneurs, or even those who have started up your own business. The first issue was ACRA. And then you've got all these fees, you've got all these little things that I completely don't understand. Then I came across Sleek. I'm just like, okay, so you mean with a click of a button, everything it just solves your problems, right? But before I get into that, I'd really like to understand something. First of all, you've introduced yourself at the very beginning when we first met that you enjoy process. You enjoy admin. You're a little bit of a square, you yourself have said. How is that even possible that you fell in love with this process? Tell me more.
I love seeing people do creative things, critical things. So whatever they makes us unique as humans. And, I think the consequence of that is that I get a bit sad when I see people doing very repetitive robotic tasks that I don't think it's best use of their being a human. So I think for me it's always thinking like, okay, is this better done by a person or by a computer? And so when I landed on that space of Corp Sec, accounting, bookkeeping, I was like, interesting. I think a lot of it is really copy pasting. My needs are very simple, and yet I have a person doing that robotic work, which ends up having my name misspelled every year with a different typo. And I get it, maybe the person doing it is a native Mandarin speaker, and my name is very French. So the same way I could have issues writing because the sound and the writing is not obvious to me. And so I don't blame the person. To me, if you ask me to do like 1,000 copy paste in the day, for sure I'll get a few ones wrong. Because it's not human to do that, right? So that's really how I look at the problem is I want to free up time for my team to be more value-add things where it's, the tech cannot really replace, be contextual, be creative, and for the most part, free up their time with more automation.
But that's the thing, I've always wondered how you turn something like this into an automated process, because I always figured that, hey, you have to look through every piece of paper. You have to look through every word. It's almost like, again, admin almost becomes like scanning legal documents, financial documents. It's not just copy pasting filing. I want to go through that process. But before that, how did you decide one day that you go, I think I could solve this problem? What was the first problem that you identified? Was it because, now Sleek isn't your first business. Was it because you identified certain things in your previous business and you went, I'm going to do it better?
Yeah, exactly. So I think it's really started from my previous business, this idea about my first frustration. So I'm more motivated by the pain.
So you like frustration in some ways.
Yeah, so I think for me it's a good trigger for any business I would start. It needs to start with a problem I understand and I feel really strongly about. So that was it for Slick. In my previous startup, I had probably 10 or 15 shareholders all over the world. And I was really having trouble getting my resolutions signs for simple things like changing the office address. Like none of my shareholders would bother with that. They don't care, right? They don't even know where we are,
because
right?
it doesn't matter to them, right?
Exactly. And yet I have to circulate certain resolutions. And my Corp Sec, so my external counsel was telling me, Julien, it's totally fine. You can do DocuSign for those things. No problem. It's legit. The E-Transaction Act has been around since 2013, I think, so no problem. Say, okay, cool. And then my Corp Sec would tell me, no, Julien, we cannot do digital. I say like, well, wait, you can or you don't want? Because it's different to me, right? I think we can.
So did they want to, or they just didn't?
They did not want it, and I think it was a mix of beliefs and being mistaken and lack of goodwill of being modern, and so I was like, interesting. That sounds like a market that is right and ready to be disrupted because there is no good reason why you would refuse progress and like you don't use like calculator, you use Excel these days, right? To me, it's like the same kind of analogies where you are living with completely outdated tools. And so that struck me as like, okay, that's an interesting place. So I ended up trying a few Corp Sec and could not find anyone that was compatible with just the tech stack I wanted to have. So I found that it was really insanely obvious to me that something was broken. So I ended up appointing myself as my own Corp Sec.
Is that wait, hold on? Is that even allowed?
Yeah, it's allowed. If you're not the only director, you can be your own Corp Sec as long as you are of sane mind. I think you are more than 18. Like a few basic conditions which unfortunately I met.
Sorry, I think that of sane mind to do your own Corp Sec doesn't sound right already.
It's subjective, but I did a polling around me to say yes, you are sane enough. I ended up appointing myself as Corp Sec, and because I had been as a director, I'd signed all the templates that there was really for the basic stuff. So and I ended up reading a lot on Accra website. They have a lot of resources.
Okay.
So I sort of educated myself on the ground, and I found that my intuition was quite correct in the sense like if you're a small business like Slick, for the most part, you can automate those things, and you just want to have one person to reach out to that is knowledgeable every now and then, but that's not very frequent. But when you need to have that person. So for me, I was calling Accra quite often to ask more complicated questions. I didn't know myself, or I would ask my lawyer. But for 70-80% of it, after 2 or 3 years, I think I was like a decent junior Corp Sec probably. I read the Companies Act, those things, which was probably more my curiosity, natural curiosity for understanding something deep. So that's what triggered me to initially start Sleek.
I see. And what was the first iteration of Sleek? I mean, in terms of the list of services that you would have provided or automated first?
So for the first part was digital incorporation and Corp Sec. So that was probably 3 of us, my 2 other co-founders, Adrian and Orion. One was a lawyer, the other one was a marketeer, and I was more probably the glue and the tech/finance guy.
Sounds like a good mix.
Yeah, that was probably the most decisive early day moment is finding this complementarity of skills where great combination, great alignment of stars. We recall those early days where we would all be busy doing something that the other doesn't want to know about, which is good. So it's not like, it's quite natural.
So you were basically like, riding on each other each time. It's like, oh, hey, where's that thing? Where's that thing? Are you coming up with it?
Yeah, exactly. That would be exactly the interaction we had in the early days. So that was, and we built Sleek on the back of, existing tools. So that was compared to my previous startup where, I thought for a long time that the product would eventually create a need or I was very product-led. I always thought like I was not getting enough client, enough revenue, enough traction because my product wasn't good enough. And I think it was probably fundamentally a problem with the market. So at Sleek, I promised myself I would never do the same mistake again, and therefore we got revenue even before we got any product. We were just using Google Docs and and DocuSign. We would pay a subscription like everybody else, but we would deliver a full digital service. And I think the client, at the end of the day, don't really care whether it's your own deck made, by yourself, or you buy and use intelligently someone else's tech. I don't think that makes a difference in how well or not well you solve a problem. So to me, the tools is just the means to an end. It's not the end.
So what were the list of services that you really wanted to, when you first started solving with the first iteration of Sleek?
We have in a very simple way, we have followed our clients' pain points and whatever they were telling us. Because you are the Corp Sec, you create a lot of these companies, you can follow and you have a very good feedback loop on what the pain point and the hurdles to building a business looks like for the founders. We do the first thing that our clients were telling us. They said, "Oh, now my Corp Sec is a breeze. It's on autopilot. I don't have to worry about that anymore. My deadlines, all that stress gone. I still have the stress with tax and EP, right? Okay. MOM and IRAS stress because you have deadlines. It's serious. It's regulated, so you don't want to do it randomly, right?" And so they said, "Since you guys have fixed the Corp Sec, why don't you fix those things as well?" So we said, "Okay, interesting." So that's how we launched the accounting and compliance and immigration products at Sleek.
Interesting. So you're saying that, this is a really great point, especially for new business owners, because these are the pain points that they don't think about. So like what you mentioned, it was the incorporation of the company, it was tax, audits, and it was also manpower in that sense, or at least the back end, right, in terms of admin for manpower. Interestingly enough, I was watching an interview and with Gordon Ramsay. And they asked him, what are the things that people in the F&B business don't really get when they want to start it up, and what are the two pain points that they always overlook? And it's exactly that. It is rent and labor cost. So these are the big things I think in your field that startups would probably need to look into. Right. And as you progress, now we're going into this bit whereby startup companies normally face these challenges at the start, but as you progress to medium companies or even larger size companies, what do you think those admin challenges become? And I love what Roshni said earlier on, which was it transcends admin because now we're looking at business operations.
Yes.
So tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I think that the admin part is really looks a bit transactional to me and superficial, which is like mostly paperwork, right? So automating paperwork has value, but I think if you look beyond that, an operation is really how you look at those transactions more as data pieces that makes you more informed about your business, makes better decision. And so I think that's really where you evolve from admin to operations. Technology, automation, and data for me is really what's eventually we work on. Producing consistently at scale those data that helps us be good advisor to a client and for our clients to make good decision about their business, right? If you at a certain point when you grow beyond, maybe a few $100,000, $1 million in revenue, I think it's hard to stay on top of which client gives me what percentage of my revenue, how much is recurring, how much do I spend on marketing, what's the real efficiency, all that, right? So if you want to make decision, the only thing, as a starting point, you need data that are consistent. That's accounting data, right? And then I think the other part is you get to spend more time as you grow into on your people operations. And so if all your time is spent discussing with MOM, with IRAS, trying to figure out what deadline you forgot and all that, that's taking away from you a lot of mental space and focus that you should not be wasting doing that. You should leave that to a pro and focus on speaking to your clients, listening to their needs, how well you're solving them, right? So I think the data and freeing up your mental space, I think is really what we try to achieve.
Right. Do you think that there are limitations to automation? Because where I'm coming from is that Again, full credit to what you guys do. At the same time, what I'm trying to figure out right now is that, okay, once the automation comes up, we have all the stats, we have all the data.
Yeah.
And like all big data, it has to be analyzed and then presented to these people. Do you think that there will be a point in time whereby Sleek is going to be getting more people to be able to dissect all of this and present it to the larger companies to give them that business case and use case and opportunities in the market?
Yeah, so we are doing a lot of research, internally on are we able to forecast the future cash flows of a business looking at the past, right? Like the same way the lender would do it, probably, but probably we have more data sets, larger data set of smaller and younger companies, which also creates a bit of noise in the data sets because you have a lot of companies that are not trading after 2 months, the person changed their mind. So you have a lot of specific case. So trying to remove the outliers and trying to find what's a baseline look like, I think is interesting. We are doing a lot of that, but one thing we are very aware of is that we are ultimately the accountant. So there is a lot of trust that goes into that. So we don't want to be perceived, and neither do we want to do things without our client's consent, right? So if I was to look at your P&L and maybe I find that you are paying too much telco A compared to what you could get from telco B, right? I think you have two ways to do it. Either I don't ask your permission and I show you some ads for telco B, or I ask to say, look, based on your, do you want us to start looking at how we could optimize your business based on the data we have and present you some relevant offers without us sharing anything about you personally that could identify you. I think that's a much better proposition.
Yeah.
From there, I can negotiate, sort of better deals with telco B, etc., right? Which benefits you, but more as a trusted partner rather than sort of aggressive and outbound marketing platform, right? We are on the side of our client,
of course,
not the publisher's advertiser.
Yeah, I love that because there was this idea somehow rather, right? Or impression that, because it is an automated system, I don't have the human contact. I don't have that business advice. I would expect some prompts to just come out like, your bill is due.
Yeah.
Or something like that. But now you're talking about the partnership in your business operations, which really brings a lot more value, I think, especially from smaller companies to medium-sized. And from your experience, what do you think were the biggest challenges, right, for smaller companies to grow into medium-sized companies?
It's a tricky question. I think if I can start maybe with Sleek. I think it's constantly reinventing yourself. What brings you from 0 to 100,000, the 100,000 to the first million, the first million to the first 10 million. What will bring us from 10 million to 100 million is always going to be fairly different. The types of people you need, the roles you need are very different as you go through that journey. I think a lot of things revolve around the people you can surround yourself with. Initially, all businesses are extremely efficient because it's always the founder who has the passion and the complete understanding of the market they are operating. They will drive it lean, right? Because you know everything. If you start business with it's your own passion, I take it as a granted you are more or less expert in your field, right? So you're not going to let nonsense
I like to think so.
come in,
yes.
right? I mean, most of people, yes, I guess. But then as you start having to delegate things, right, you get naturally people that may be less passion or so you just need to constantly hire people that are better than you for certain tasks and not necessarily look at the cost, right? So I think my biggest mistake in my previous startup was always being too focused on the cost of a person versus the value they bring. And sometimes it's better to delay and not to hire 3 people, but maybe just 1 in the right place will create massively disproportionate impact compared to 3 average person that will just, save you a bit of your time, right?
Right. So that's the first point that you're bringing up, which is hiring, right? In order for a company to grow from a small to a medium-sized one, it's not just about filling the headcount, but taking the right talent that will bring the company to the next level, right? But in terms of business operation now, what do you think, what will it take for a small company of, let's say, 1, 2, 3 people to grow from their 10,000? Well, if you've got 3 people, you're probably you've got to do 100,000 a year for sure.
Yeah.
Into let's say, for example, that 500,000, so that you can double your manpower.
Yeah, I think it's going to be mostly your go-to-market. You know, how well you sell and you market yourself. You know, at this point, I think the market is still big enough. You haven't saturated your market unless you operate in a very, very tiny niche. $500,000 of revenue, you should be able to get it pretty much anywhere, just inside Singapore for sure. So I think it's really going to be how you start being the sales guy yourself, and you hire your first sales guys, and you get decent unit economics. If you rely too much on paid marketing, bad conversion from your salespeople, then, you know, yes, you're going to grow your top line, but it's going to be so costly that you end up looking back after a year and you say, well, actually I was making more money, netting more money on a, you know, profit basis before I started scaling that, right? So everything, when you start not doing it yourself, it's going to be, you have to pay for, right? So I think that the sales marketing is probably the first thing that gets you to the $500,000 to $1 million range. I think it's hard as a founder to sell so much.
Yeah, because
and
you're
deliver,
only one.
right?
Because you're only one person, right?
Yeah,
you
and most likely you would be
yourself.
Exactly, and most likely you would be involved in delivering your goods or services in some way, right? So you can't be the sales and the, you know, the chef and the staff in the
you can't cook and also deliver all the food at the same time, right? You can't be the waiter, you can't be the delivery guy, you can't be the you
especially if you are so. And then goes back to the point of, does it make sense that you spend a lot of time doing your books yourself and your Corp Sec, right? Because if it's already challenging to be the chef, the cook, in the room serving the dishes, you know, and also the accountants, I think it becomes quite a lot, and a lot of people end up misvaluing their time. I think where is it best spent in terms of value creation? Where it is, because a lot of people say, "Well, Julien, do I have to outsource this to you?" I say, no. Everything you can do yourself, for sure. It's no rocket science. I did it myself. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a CFO by training, right? I'm just curious and patient, and, you know, so everything you can do. The only question that matters in the end is your time better spent at doing bookkeeping, Corp Sec, you know, being a chef if you are you know, in your restaurant, or being a marketer. So where is your talent, right? And if you're not talented in something, don't do it. Just do whatever you are the best at.
How did you get over that? You know, I find it so interesting that because as a founder of a company, you feel like, never mind, I can do everything. I can do it all, right? I have to, because it's mine. Then how do you finally get over that? Well, it could be an ego piece, I don't know. But you go, look, I have to accept that this person's better than me, number one. Number two, I have to be willing to pay fair price. Or how do I then explore models that will lower my cost and increase my revenue? How do you get over that hurdle? And let's say, for example, for Sleek, your first few hires, how did you manage that?
Well, I think for Sleek, I was pretty cognizant and aware of that fact from the start, because my previous startup, I really ran that for 5, 6, 7 years.
Right.
And I had a lot of great staff, but I was always more focused on, so I don't want to represent that I would not have great quality staff there, but I was always more focused on hiring more people for less salaries. And so you end up with having, you know, not a right balance of seniority in the team to make the smart decision. So for me, how you get there, to go back to your question, is I think my way of learning is trialing and error. That's the only thing pretty much I can get. And experience. After some point, once you have experienced the joy of hiring someone, crossing that, you know, that river where you say, "Wow, it's painful, man. It's a lot. The guy's paid more than me, right?" But he does the work so much better that now suddenly you are not only on autopilot, you don't spend the time, but you get it done much better than you would have done yourself. For me, it's a delight every time. Hire someone smarter than me, and so I see now with Sleek, pretty much everybody is smarter than me in whatever they do. I love that feeling.
Did you find that it was kind of a gamble? Because you had to go, I really hope this person does it better than me. If this person can't do it better than me, should I still keep that person?
Yeah, I think it's that comes with when you pay someone at a high price, you can have a high expectation, and that solves kind of your equation, right?
That's a really interesting point. I didn't think about that because most of the time we're always thinking about how do I so-called fair market value, but I've never thought about if I invested more, this is how much more I'm going to get.
Exactly. So you will always finding excuses for people you go about on the cheap, right? And so you say, yeah, but it doesn't cost so much, or therefore it's more acceptable. If you go for people, someone paid more than you, then you start having high expectation, and you stop finding yourself excuses for delivering, poorly as a team, right? Not the person, but as a team, right? So for me, it's an easy way out of that vicious cycle of complacency and finding excuses for things that are not working as well as they should. And when you go higher caliber, you also feel less guilty about the person employment situation, right? Because you know that someone at that level will more easily find another job if it doesn't work with you than if someone that was, having a more junior, lower pay. I think it's more challenging technically or statistically for those guys to find their next job than for a top performer that you pay really well, right? And most often it's not about the person, it's about the wrongly designed job scope and poor management. So most of the people that don't succeed at Sleek, I really take it on me that I did not make it work more than the person, right? Because the person was good and smart and motivated initially. So why is it that we end up parting ways? But I don't feel guilty because for me it's, we pay well, we expect great outcome. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you've been listening up to this far, thank you so much. If you're liking the content, please don't forget to give us a like, follow, subscribe, whatever it is or wherever it is that you are doing right now. Help us out, okay? And we're going to take a short break. When we come back, we're going to be talking a little bit more about Sleek's market expansion plans, as well as some perhaps leadership stories and a little bit more about Julien as well. We'll be right back. Last we spoke, Sleek was going to go or is in various countries and planning to go into others. Where exactly from? You started that in Singapore. Eventually, you're moving it to expand it into the rest of Asia and beyond. Where are the locations of Sleek right now?
Chronologically, Singapore, then Hong Kong, then the UK, then Australia. To give you an idea, we have probably a few percent market share in those markets. We're already doing well. So if you just look at the financial efficiency of where do you put money to work, I think it's better spent in those current markets than going to teen.
Okay.
Because everything we do is regulated. So you always need license, you always need integration with your local tax authorities and so on. Everything looks simple on paper. When you start hiring remotely, when you start having to deal with those other paperwork issues elsewhere, this has a real cost and takes a lot of your time and focus. So I think it's always wise to think before you want to be everywhere, why don't you get like big market share, big brand, people know you in a small market, they come to you for free again and again. That's a very good business model, right? When people come to you for free. If you are nobody in many places, then for sure no one is going to come to you for free, right? So you will have to advertise to become somebody as a brand. And so always a balance that we discuss with my board, like when is the right time? You don't want to leave too much space for your competitors and be too early without you being there. So it's always a challenge.
What were the triggers that you kind of go, hey, I need to scale? Because sometimes as business owners, there are some people who are happy with $150,000 a year.
Yeah.
There are some people who want that 500,000. There are some that go, I need to make that $1 million revenue in X number of years. What do you think were your triggers to go, I need to scale from point A to point B, and then from point B to eventually point C?
For me, it's my competitive nature and curiosity. I want to see things that I've not done before. So I get bored easily, and I like to win. So for me, it's sort of natural to try things that I don't know if I'm good at it, and try to fail and stretch myself. So I love at Sleek every day is a completely new set of challenge. Things that are very hard, most often we fail and we recognize that, and we are not, there is only those that don't try that never fail. So I think I try to instill the failure and embrace it mindset with everyone at Sleek, which is not natural, right? And for an entrepreneur, it's very natural to fail. For an employee, it's not. So I think it's really the challenge.
For the Sleek side of things, right? What were I would say, the strategic points where you go, okay, I've reached this amount of revenue. We need to go for the next milestone. What were those milestones that you had set?
The milestones in terms of geographic expansion was probably more thinking it would be easy. So it was probably not really well articulated.
Why does it sound like you took it for granted? Oh, thinking it's going to be easy.
I mean, the truth is that it was not well researched, well planned. I think when we did it, it was fairly early on, at least in Hong Kong. We thought that, it's the same common law, English-speaking country, small hub, so probably the clients have more or less the same issues. Very similar things between Hong Kong and Singapore on our core market. So I think that was a bit opportunistic. And we've been doing really well over there, to be honest. So I think, in hindsight, I think we do exactly the same timing. We launched during the time of protest and the COVID, so the timing was really rough on us, but still we did really well, and we're still growing very fast there. Hong Kong and Australia was probably more addressing the concern or the legitimate question of an investor, VCs that say, okay, fine, you can do millions in small countries, but it's never going to be a unicorn. So any investor will want to see a path to you becoming a unicorn. Otherwise, their business model doesn't work. So an investor, the venture capitalist, they will never invest in a business if they think your business is going to be sitting at 100 million, right, in terms of valuation, because it doesn't pay for the risk they take, right, and the high rate of failure of their investment.
Right.
So you have to find a market that is big enough to sustain or to justify you having the potential to become a unicorn, right? And so essentially is what market share can you reasonably capture? Okay, between 1 and 10, 20% times the number of companies, like how big is that market, times how much you are currently selling to your current clients. And so that is a very simple equation that everybody would get, that define a little bit where you can, what's your horizon as a company. If everything goes well, where are you, right?
Yeah. So where are you going to be next?
We're looking, like I said, I think we are very busy increasing market share. I think, our biggest market, UK, Australia, we're already in the millions. I think we are less than 1% market share in those countries, right? So for me, the next question is really for the next couple of years is, how do I make all these countries, tens and really big there?
Right. So you're going to look at scaling rather than further expansion.
Yes.
Now, this one's more on your, I would say, entrepreneurial mindset. When you decided on these particular locations to expand, did you have a plan B, or did you go burn the boats? We're going forward.
I think we never had a plan B, always thinking we would make it, but that's probably our ethos at Sleek. We don't like wasting money and energy, so we go nimble. We try to go and fail fast and learn fast. We're never going to be having a lavish office to start with, hiring like rock stars, very expensive stuff. And so we try to be very humble, because we know we fail so much. We just try to do it humbly and in small steps, but very quick ones. And therefore, if it's not like a binary succeed or fail, I think it's a lot. The overall trend is progress and upward. But if you look inside, there's a lot of up and down every day.
For sure.
And that's so. But we never said to say, okay, if it doesn't work, we'll stop. Right? It's not our ethos.
Interesting.
Because we look at a market that is fundamentally exists. There are Corp Sec, there are accounting, there are neobanks or traditional banks in all those countries. So, the only legit reason to pull out of a market if you don't have a product market fit or the market doesn't really exist, we should not be, deaf to what the market says, right? But there are people paying, there are accountants, there are Corp Sec, having issues with their banks in all those markets. So it's not a question of if we are successful, is when, right? And it's just relentlessly trying.
How do you communicate your ethos, right, to the rest of your staff? Because you're the boss, you're the leader, I would say, among the leadership team. They don't exactly have a stake in that. So how do you communicate that to them, that they have no fear, that they can go, let's go?
We never scold someone for taking initiative, right? We don't punish failure, we encourage it, and we recognize that are willing to take a risk.
I need to ask you this. How do you recognize somebody who failed? Do you have like a wall of shame and go, hey, look how everybody failed today?
I think we like people that take initiative. Yeah, and so we say, oh, that was...
Biggest failure of the week.
Yeah, best failure of the week, right? So, no, I think it's all the time. I try to do it with my direct reports, and I expect them to do the same. And so it's daily, like, let's be open about things that work. So you're not here to advertise your successes, right? I just want to hear the good, the bad, the ugly, about everything. And I think there's a lot of joy in being honest, in appreciating that not everything is going to work well, but there is so much more learning in everything that doesn't work, because it leads you to places that you did not anticipate, right? And so, as to your point, if you have a plan B for failure all the time, then you keep going back to safety, and you stop innovating, you stop challenging yourself.
Yeah.
It just, I think it's just a muscle you build from the top down, I guess. You hire people that are open about, learning and being humble about it. And then they will hire people like them, and those people will hire people like them, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that's what you want to have, ideally.
Cool. And tell me something that you feel that you might have taken for granted that led to perhaps the failing of the first business, or at least I won't say the failing, but the greatest learning that you had from your previous business that you've translated to Sleek.
I think thinking that a good product will solve my lack of a revenue or traction or whatever ways. I think I was so passionate that I stopped listening to facts and clients. Even my wife was telling me, like, I would not use your product. It's nonsense, right? It's not for me. It's like, and I would keep arguing with her, like, why she would be wrong, right?
You don't get it.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. And so I think, if it's not working, just listen to the facts, listen to clients, and there might just be no market for your product, right? So I think I was the only one, or the first one, to do that business globally. It was a money changer comparison app. No one has done that before. So either, I think from there you have two possibilities. Either you are a genius, a precursor, or there is no business and there is a good reason why you are the only one. And so I think you should ask yourself, if it's too lonely, it's either going to be hell or heaven, I guess. And you need to recognize what heaven looks like early on by listening to clients. I was not listening to clients. I was more focused. So once I ship like a great product, put it in front of them, they will happily pay, right? Yeah. But I was fundamentally, no one was going to pay for what I was doing.
If your wife could knock some sense into you at those times, who or what knocked that sense into you?
I got exhausted myself of trying and not succeeding. So I ended up realizing it was never going to work. But it took me 5 or 6 years to get there, which is, for me, it was the time I built like my entire database of failing and experiments. So I can relate to a lot of things that I know will not work for some reason, because I've already done it.
Okay.
So I think for me, it's only makes you richer. Of course, at that time you are, because you want to show you are not letting, you don't want to quit, right? So you insist. So I think that's the positive side, is you gain a lot of experience.
Resilience, right?
Exactly. But at some point you can just be, stubborn, and that is the dark side of it, where you don't listen and you don't learn.
That's so much knowledge that I've picked up today. Thank you so much, Julien,
My pleasure.
Again, having me in your office, allowing me to set up here and do the podcast with you, right? And before we end the podcast, with every guest, we always do a rapid fire round of 10 questions, known as the Epic Questionnaire. So, Julien,
Sure.
Are you ready?
Let's go Epic.
First question: one word you like the most.
Candor.
Question 2: one word you really dislike.
Lazy.
3: if you could have a conversation with anybody, dead or alive, fictional, non-fictional, who would that be?
Maybe God.
Which one?
Any. I don't have a preferred one.
All right. What do you say to yourself in the mirror every morning?
Be honest.
Name one superpower that you like to have.
Going back in time.
Favorite dish to eat?
Has to be a French dish for sure.
Talk about bias.
Yes. I think a good blanquette de veau.
I have no idea what that is.
Blanket veal. I don't know. What does that translate in English?
I don't know, but veal sounds
veal.
great.
Yeah,
Veal sounds
was sauce, creamy, delicious. Try that.
I didn't eat breakfast and I haven't had lunch, so you're not helping. But anyway, so favorite travel spot or the next travel spot you want to go to with your loved ones?
We love Japan a lot. I like discovering new things, and Japan is so
Absolutely.
different that that's definitely a place where everything is different.
Nice.
And so I love that.
Okay, awesome. And something in the arts that you've always wanted to do, but you yet to do so?
Singing. I suck. I'd love to get singing because when I go, at the karaoke with my friend, like I embarrass myself singing.
What does retirement look like to you?
Countryside, fishing. I love fishing. I love being in the wild, nature, silence.
Last question. How do you want to be remembered? What's your legacy?
As an honest guy.
Well, short, simple, sweet.
Yeah.
Thank you so much again for having us. Do you want anybody to connect with you after this podcast or anything like that? Or you want to make a plug about Sleek?
Yeah, anyone wants to contact, share, battle stories and the bad, the good, and the ugly. Everybody can find me on LinkedIn. I'm old school. I don't think I have Instagram, anything like that. So yeah, LinkedIn is the place, and I'm at the office at Sleek every day. If one of our clients wants to find me, easy to engage with me.
Okay, so you heard that right here on the Epic Podcast. Get in touch with Julien via LinkedIn, and also do check out Sleek if you're starting up your own business or you already have one. Check out Sleek, and we'll see you in the next episode of the Epic Podcast. Bye, everyone.